Welcome to Issues and Answers with your host, Diane. Issues and Answers is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. And now, Issues and Answers with your host, Diane.
Welcome to the program. I'm Diane. You know it's here. You can't escape it. The election. The election is Tuesday, November 8th. You probably have early voted by now. If not, of course, election or gone in person, early voting, got a ballot by mail. But we know that you can go vote in person on Tuesday, November 8th. Here at KCHF TV, we are offering a public service to our viewers to give you an opportunity to hear from candidates. And we've invited the candidates during the primary, if you recall. We had a number of candidates for sheriff, for Congress, for lieutenant governor, for governor, I think secretary of state. We invited many of them so you could, and those who accepted our invitation were on our program. That was during the primary back in June. Now those who have won the primary are in the general election, which is again Tuesday, November 8th, have been invited, but mainly the candidates for governor and for Congress. So those candidates who have accepted our invitation are on our program. And I'd like to share with you that today we have with us Congresswoman Yvette Herrell. She is representing currently Congressional District 2, and that's basically kind of the southern part of the state up through even the South Valley of Albuquerque and beyond. So she is our guest today. We appreciate her taking time out of her busy schedule to be part of this program. But please do recall that we have invited the candidates for governor and for Congress, and again, those who have accepted, like Congresswoman Yvette Herrell, who is running for her seat again this November 8th, are going to be guests on our show. So please stay with us as we talk to Yvette Herrell, the Congresswoman from District 2, right after this. Please stay with us.
In the past few years, we've seen a significant increase in government infringement on our constitutional and religious freedoms. Now, so many people are asking, how do I protect my family? What's the truth? Who can I believe? And how can I get involved? Freedom Alive is created for this exact time with a truthful, timeless, biblical perspective on issues we all face today. From attacks on your religious freedoms to celebrating the faith wins, you'll be empowered with truth so you can get involved to defend your priceless freedom. Watch every week as we share and encourage you to keep your freedom alive.
As I mentioned, we had invited all the candidates who are running for the congressional districts to be guests on our programs, and those who have been accepted our invitation are in our studio. And today I have Congresswoman Yvette Herrell from Congressional District 2, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation.
I'm happy to be here, and I know we've talked before, so it's always a treat to be here with you.
Yes, you have been in KCHF TV, and we do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us. Regarding this race and regarding the status of our nation, I personally know how my life has been impacted by the chaos in our country. I could tell you that the inflation has affected me, the crime has affected me, and my neighbors. I can't even drive into my neighborhood, and my friends tell me the same thing, without police cars cordoning off the areas because there's crime in that area. So, what are your priorities, Congresswoman Yvette Herrell, for the next 2 years?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and really that's the conversation that's taking place all over America. I mean, it really truly is. These policies in Washington, D.C. have really helped to drive up inflation. You know, the cost of living, cost of gas, groceries, the open border is very concerning, especially in a border state. And then we're seeing the fentanyl, you know, the human trafficking. All of these things are unfortunately now kind of kitchen table conversations because there's so much uncertainty. And that's why I'm very proud of the Commitment to America.
And that was just announced recently that all the Republicans have signed on to this in Congress.
We have.
In the House?
In the House. Because we know that the American people need answers, they want transparency, and they want to see action. They know they cannot sustain this high cost of living. I mean, now, basically, because of this inflation, everybody with a job is essentially working 1 month for free. because that's just the way the inflation is happening. Well, we can't afford that. And now people are telling me, they're having to choose between filling up the vehicle to drive to work, or buying groceries, or buying school supplies, or thinking about paying their mortgage or their utility bills. And right now, before we get into winter, 1 in 6 Americans are already behind on their utilities. So joining the conference, the Republican conference, and putting something in writing for the American people so they can see these are the priorities. Because we all want accountability in our government. We want freedom in terms of an education for our children, that we're not setting them up for failure. We want a secure America, and that means with our Department of Defense, but also securing our southern border. And we want to face that the reality of the economy.
There is so much, Congresswoman Herrell. You served in the State House for a number of years. You've been in Congress for a number of years. Have you seen things this bad, again, with the threat with Russia and Ukraine and possibly nuclear war going on? I mean, and the inflation, not just at the gas pump, at the grocery store, and the fact we cannot find suppliers. People want to buy things, but they can't because the goods are not there.
Right, and I think that's going to get worse next year, because in the conversations I've had with farmers, ranchers around the nation, we know that there were a lot of crops not planted. And you remember, it's 1% of the population, our ag operations, feeding 100% of the people. And when you're faced with uncertainties with not only climate in terms of weather, drought, but the cost of pesticides, the cost of fertilizer, the cost of diesel, we had many farmers that did not plant their crops this year. And we're talking about it in small circles, but we've got to start talking about it to the American people. But you're right. In the years I served in New Mexico State Legislature, and even this first term in Congress, this has been very troubling. And it shouldn't matter what party anymore. It's about people. It's about people over politics, and finding those shared values, and stop letting mainstream media dictate the conversation. But let's have a real conversation with each other and how we can fix these issues. And one of the first things we do is stop the overspending in Washington, cut out the waste, fraud, and abuse, get the supply chains back on track, put people back to work, and secure our state sovereignty and our nation's sovereignty by securing the southern border.
It seemed before COVID, to me, again, this is my personal observation, things were going so well.
Yeah.
With the previous administration prior to COVID hitting, and then everything seemed to change.
It did. And a part of it, of course, is hindsight. We can always say we could have done things differently, but unfortunately, there are so many policies that are going through the House right now that we can't stop, that are impacting the economy of this nation, the pocketbook of every American. And this is what's unsettling to me, because it doesn't have to be this way. The overspending in Washington, D.C., we have spent or seen bills pass trillions of dollars on top of regular, budget. So this makes no sense, and that's what's helping to drive up the inflation. But also, day one, 5 hours into office, this administration, this president signs the executive order to stop the XL Keystone Pipeline. I mean, this makes no sense, because the frightening part to me is the fact that we would actually be reliant on foreign adversaries for energy. And
at one point we were independent,
right,
in recent years.
And that makes us a stronger nation. I mean, it is absolutely a national security issue, being energy independent. But what are we going to do on the day that these adversaries decide and determine how much energy we can actually use or consume?
Congresswoman Herrell, let's run down some of the issues.
Okay.
In regards to our safety and the fact that Putin and Ukraine, they're engaged in a war, and they want to drive America into it, but we're standing apart, other than sending millions and billions of dollars. So let's start with our safety of our country and the position that you have regarding this war in Ukraine with Russia.
Yeah, and it's sad to see it happening. And honestly, I believe if we had a stronger presence in the White House, we may or may not be seeing this conflict between Russia and Ukraine. I really believe that. But here's the thing, NATO is going to be the one making the final decisions on the involvement. But what I don't like seeing in Washington is that we're kind of playing both sides of the fence. We're having conversations with Putin as it relates to energy, but we're also sending, like you mentioned, billions of dollars to Ukraine. And I feel like this is a non-winning situation for the American people. But what concerns me more is it seems that this administration is very concerned about the Ukrainian borders, but not about America's southern border. And I think our priority needs to shift, and we need to put the American people first. It should be U.S. first. Then we can build a stronger America and be better allies and better forces.
I heard the slogan U.S. first recently in another administration, U.S. first.
We have to do it that way. I mean, we're not going to be any good to our allies around the world or to even bringing aid to these nations that find themselves in conflict if we don't have a strong economy here.
Let's get back to our border. Here. You wrote a letter to Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham back last year regarding the state National Guard.
Yes.
Tell me, what is the situation now? And your District 2 borders, first let's go where your borders of your district are. So viewers know we have 3 congressional districts.
Correct.
You're the only Republican serving in Congress.
That's right.
Our 2 state senators are not Republican, and 2 House members are, and you're the lone. 2 are not, and you're the lone Republican.
I am. I'm the only Republican in the federal elections in the delegation or on a statewide level. So I am the one that is leading the charge when it comes to border, energy, what we're talking about on the day-to-day basis. But this new district, essentially, if you look at the state of New Mexico, it's kind of a diagonal. It would be, from the southwest corner and then kind of up to midway in the state. So it encompasses now the South Valley, western part of Albuquerque. They've cut out a lot of the oil and gas portions of the original District 2, which that's where some of the rub is, because we've now kind of chopped up the communities and counties of interest. But still, last cycle and this cycle, I still encompass the 180 miles of border that we have. And so to your question...
So the entire?
Yes,
the entire border of New Mexico is in Congressional District 2.
Right.
Okay, so what is now, prior to the election, which is, of course, November 8th.
Yeah.
What's the status of the border, our National Guard and the federal government's involvement?
Well, last year...
And the wall.
Yeah, everything.
What's going on?
Last year we sent a letter because we could see already the uptick starting to happen as soon as this administration took office, because when you do away with policies that were actually working on the border and keeping Americans safe, we understood that this was going to be a huge problem. So we asked the governor to deploy the National Guard to help alleviate the pressure that's being put on the men and women in the Border Patrol. She would not do it. And so now what we see is, I think the numbers just were released last week, over 2 million people apprehended at the border. The gotaways, meaning those who just slipped through the cracks, who no one apprehended, that number's pushing up to 1 million. And
now that's this year?
That's since this administration took office.
Okay.
But this year, we've seen over 200,000 people, and that number jumps every day, come through the El Paso sector, which does encompass the New Mexico border.
And a lot of Venezuelans, why are they coming through?
Well, this is interesting because just before I came back to New Mexico, Chief Gloria Chavez, she's the sector chief for the El Paso sector, called, and it's alarming. They're seeing between 12 and 1,500 Venezuelans a day. And she said that uptick from, a few, 20, 30 to a couple hundred to now this number. They're actually releasing 300 people, Venezuelans, a day into the city of El Paso. They're busing some to different parts of Texas, Yuma, San Diego, New York. The problem is we don't have the bandwidth to hold these people, and now every state's a border state. Every state is seeing an uptick in crime, in fentanyl. We can't contain this number of people coming into this nation.
Now, when they're coming across, they're not coming through the ports of entry, they're coming through...
They're coming across the Rio Grande.
Just the Rio Grande.
Gloria Chavez tells me herself she literally has seen the Venezuelans calling others saying, you need to come across here because the water in the Rio Grande is so shallow. It's not as dangerous. So they are preparing for even a larger uptick in crossings there. But, here's what's, you want to hear something crazy? With this Inflation Relief Act that they passed that put 87,000 more IRS agents in play, we have 20,000 Border Patrol agents and now over 120,000 IRS agents.
Checking our tax papers about what? Yeah. About our security?
Ready to audit people. And so day one, with this commitment to America, like Leader McCarthy says, we're going to get rid of the 87,000 IRS agents because no American should have to worry about being audited, or harassed by the IRS. We need to get the American people back on track, get our economy back on track.
To invest in our safety. So
sure.
The wall, what has happened to the wall?
Nothing. It was funded, then it was stopped under this administration. There are so many things we could be doing, though. Stop, catch, and release. Reimpose remain in Mexico. Give the Border Patrol agents the tools they need and the budget they need to ensure the American safety. And without borders, we don't have a country. And right now, we don't even know who's coming into the nation. We know over 80 people on the FBI's most wanted list have been apprehended. But think about the ones that got through that we don't know about.
And we're not talking about our neighbors from Mexico or Central America. These
Right.
are coming from all over the world.
All over the world. In fact, they've identified, I think it's over 56 nations. And what we've got is a open for business sign. We are not sending people to jail. We're not sending people back. We've just got this open for business sign, and in fact, giving people access to services and goods that we're not even giving to the American people. What about the homeless veterans? I mean, our priority needs to shift where we're putting Americans first, where we're giving the hand up to the people in America that need it, and not putting the Americans on the back burner and just welcoming folks that are, remember, they're breaking the law to come here. No other country in the world would allow people to come illegally into their borders.
And once they come in, they get all the services that our country
and
has to offer.
It's taking money out of our government coffers, out of our local budgets, and it's costing the American taxpayer billions of dollars every month to do this.
You've been in Congress a number of years, so what?
Just 1 year. It feels like a number of years, but just 1 year.
What has changed? What has changed? What can change? I mean, you've been in office.
Yeah.
What can you do differently?
Well, you know what concerns me?
This
is
commitment to America.
The commitment to America, because we're willing to put it on writing and say this is what we need to do to get America back on track. We need policies that'll fix the supply chain, that'll drive the cost of fuels down, that'll put food on the table, that'll bring some relief to every single pocketbook. That we want to make sure we're not failing our children, and that within this commitment is also the Parental Bill of Rights, because no parent should be harassed by the Department of Justice or FBI for simply going to a school board meeting to want to know what is the curriculum, what are my kids learning. We have to get the family back together again and let the parents teach the values at home and let them have a voice in what their children are learning in public school. And I personally believe we should actually, in New Mexico, have school choice. Let the dollar follow the student. So regardless of where a parent wants their child to be educated, those funds follow that child. But we can do this, and there's no reason we find ourselves in this position we're in right now with 40-year high inflation, with the highest gas prices we've ever seen, with 100,000 fentanyl overdoses a year. I mean, we can fix this, but it starts with our commitment to America.
And they can find that on the website, on your webpage. Maybe tell the viewers more specifics. In this short program, we can't run down everything in the commitment to America.
Right.
But
the best place they can go is commitmenttoamerica.com. Just commitmenttoamerica.com. It lays out our policy plan. It lays out our position to bring 200,000 men and women into law enforcement and give them the tools that they need. I have always said we've got to fund the police. We cannot defund. We want safe neighborhoods. We want safe communities, but we can't have that if we're not giving the law enforcement men and women the tools they need. And so we've got to get our priorities straight and make sure we're putting the people first over politics. And in my opinion, this isn't about red and blue right now. This is about red, white, and blue. It matters what's going to happen in November. It matters the future of this nation.
what is the numbers? What we have, 435 or 7
Members.
Yeah. So not the number of breakdown, but now it's controlled by the Democrats,
Yes.
and President Biden, of course, is a Democrat as well. What do you think in this midterm election could happen with the change in Congress?
I think there could be a great opportunity for Republicans to take the House and the Senate. And I know some people say, well, if you do that and you bring these policies forward, then what? We still have a Democrat in the White House. You know what? That's true. But we also now can force the hand of the president. Are you going to veto bills that we know will help the American people? Or are you going to sign them into law so that we can get Americans back on track, so that we can ensure safety for our communities? We can ensure we're building a stronger economy and stop being so reliant on China, get the supply chains moving again, and enhance and bolster our economy throughout the country.
On the campaign trail, I could tell you everything I think is, what's happening. What are people telling you is their major concern?
They're telling me it's the economy, it's crime, it's the open border, and it's education. Certainly there are social issues that are very important, but right now what people are more concerned about, the ones I'm talking to, is how do we how will we see change coming? When will we be able to afford gas or groceries?
And what can Congress, we all have personal responsibility
Sure.
in our choices of buying things. I know I'm making choices. It is so hot, that is so expensive. I am protesting and I'm not going to purchase that.
Yeah.
But friends tell me, it's just going to keep going up, so you better
It's
buy
going
it.
to
I
keep
mean, that's a
going
very
up.
concern.
Until we get a
So
handle on this overspending. Congress.
Congress is the one.
They can. I mean, we've got to get rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse. And like I just said, we've spent trillions of dollars over what the actual funding budget is. And most of it on the clean energy, the climate change, the Green New Deal. And listen, I'm an all of the above energy person, but I'm also a realist. And energy demands are going to go up. And American energy is produced cleaner, more efficiently, and more affordably than anywhere in the world.
What is the concern about blackouts next summer?
Well,
I mean,
yeah,
California's having them. We kind of are following what California's doing. What's
We
going to
really
happen
are.
with us?
Well, we first off, we don't really have the infrastructure in play. The cost, the cost to put this infrastructure in play is going to hit every single pocketbook even more so. And just on the Inflation Reduction Act, that didn't deflate inflation. In fact, it's bringing it higher. And look at what's happening at the stock market. So we've got to stop the overspending, focus on getting rid of duplicative and overspending measures, cut out the fraud, the waste, the abuse of power, balance our federal budget. You and I have to live within a budget. The federal government is not. But in a situation where we find ourselves in right now, the policies and the commitment to America are exactly what Americans need. And it's not Republican or
Where do we
Democrat.
cut back to balance the budget?
Well, the overspending. And when for instance, when you hire, bring in 87,000 IRS agents and billions of dollars to pay for that, when you send billions of dollars to Ukraine to care about their border but not our own southern border, when you're putting a climate bank in play, which actually has been funded to the tune of over $24 billion, which is 3 times the annual budget.
It's been going on. That's been
yeah.
going on.
It's
but
just
even
this
over the previous
overspending.
administration, there was overspending.
We've just got to really, we're all, after COVID, we've all had to change the way, we make choices, and now we've
Our
got to
oil
do
and
it.
gas industry here in the state of New Mexico, of course, is a boon for us.
Yeah.
But and our country has been energy secure.
Yes.
But now we're not.
We're not, and it's a shame, and it's frightening. And it's scary to think that this administration has sent oil to China out of our strategic petroleum reserve, which is basically our kind of our rainy day, oil reserve. So if there's a catastrophic wind event or weather event or something, a war breaks out, we have those reserves in place. It's scary to think that we're depleting the reserves for the American people. And I smile when I say this because, this governor and my colleagues in the House are against fossil fuels, but yet nobody's turning back the $2 billion surplus of spending that industry will bring to the state legislature.
Something that's hit in the news recently, of course, is abortion and a woman's right to choose versus right to life. What is your position on this, and what do you think of gubernatorial candidate Mark Ronchetti saying, let the voters decide?
I agree with that. And everybody knows me. I've been pro-life. I carried legislation in Santa Fe when I was a state rep. And I think the Dobbs decision was right because it gave now the states the opportunity to make the laws that work for them. And Mark Ronchetti's correct. No politician should be making these decisions. It should be made by the people. So I certainly agree. And in this state of New Mexico, we already have abortion laws on the books. So protecting women's health, of course, but also the abortion doesn't change here just by virtue of what we already have. But I also think we need to be focusing more on choices for women, adoption, resources, support groups. But right now, I think what the bigger conversation is, economy, crime, education, open borders. These are the things that are, people are really concerned about because they're touching their wallets and they're impacting their livelihoods and their children's lives.
And final word from you, Congresswoman Yvette Herrell. Thank you for being on this program.
Thank you.
We all have responsibility to vote on Tuesday, November 8th, but your final points to the folks out there, hoping for things to get better. I mean, it's affecting us tremendously.
Yeah.
What can we do as Americans to change this?
Well, we got to keep praying about it. But I think really what we need to think about is Yvette Herrell's not going to be the most important person on the ballot. The American people are, the people of New Mexico. This November, we're voting for our families, for our livelihoods, for what we believe in, our values, and mostly our freedom. That's what's on the ballot in November, and people need to vote for their shared values. And like I said, it shouldn't be, it's gotten so divisive. It shouldn't be just red or blue. It should be red, white, and blue. We're voting for a country that has been so generous to us as a people, and it's time that we stand up and protect our nation and start protecting the values that have been so important to every one of us, regardless of party. And I hope that's what we see happen in November, and we'll see the voters get out and vote for their values, and they're voting for their kids and their grandkids and the future of this country.
They certainly are. This is the time to do it. Thank
Yes.
you. Congresswoman Yvette Herrell, thank you for taking the time to be at our studio. We do appreciate it. And for your public service to the state of New Mexico.
Thank you.
And thanks to all the candidates who are running. We appreciate their public service. But those who have accepted our invitation have been here on the air, and we thank them. Again, Congresswoman Yvette Herrell, thank you so much. Thanks for watching the program. I'm Diane Kinderwater. Make it a great week with your family. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Do you trust your news sources? Are you tired of one-sided reporting? You need to know the Media Line to know the Middle East.
The world needs news you can trust.
The Media Line's reporters are in the streets of Cairo, Jerusalem, Ramallah, and Sana'a, bringing you stories in context which shape your views and decisions. The Media Line is the first independent, non-profit American news agency covering the Middle East. Now in its 20th year, it's the best-kept secret in the news business. Discover for yourself why the Media Line is relied upon by government officials and media outlets worldwide.
Bringing you the stories which impact your lives.
Support the trusted Mideast news source today by going to themedialine.org. You need to know the Media Line to know the Middle East.
In the Army National Guard, family means everything.
Our parents, they were really supportive that all 5 of us would join. I got my education because of the Guard. I got to travel a little bit and experience a whole different culture. It helped me get my job, helped me pay for my house. Being part-time really helped because I could have some opportunities that were still in education.
Serving part-time in the Army National Guard instills pride that you and your family will share. Visit NationalGuard.com to learn more about part-time service.
Issues and Answers with your host Diane Kinderwater is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. To comment on today's program or to purchase a copy of any Issues and Answers program, visit sunbroadcasting.org or call us at 505-345-1991.